How's it going, y'all? It's your boy, Raymond, back up in here with another review video. And today we have got a little bit of an album from an artist that kind of broke my heart a little bit with a couple of her albums. We have, of course, are talking about the amazing Miss Angel Olsen and her new album, Big Time. Now, for some of you who may not know who Angel Olsen is, let me go ahead and tell you she is this amazing singer-songwriter slash guitar player, multi-instrumentalist. She has been sort of making waves in the indie rock scene for a little bit now, and had really blown up after the release of her album My Woman, as well as her album from a couple years ago, All Mirrors. Two albums which, you know, are just so powerful, so amazing, so fun to listen to, but also so heartbreaking, so emotive. Her style of singing and her style of songwriting has something that has really affected me, and her songwriting is something that I really look to as inspiration of how I write a lot of the songs for my music, and how, you know, I just sort of am able to, I guess, cope and deal with certain emotions the way that, you know, the way that she does, essentially. And so now, after All Mirrors and after My Woman, essentially with this new project, Big Time, she is essentially not covering up the past, but she is essentially blooming and transitioning from her previous sound into this sort of new sound for this new album, Big Time. And what I mean by that is, my friend and I, we went and saw her short film in LA, where we got to watch her do a Q&A, as well as she performed a few songs off of her new album, which was just magical and beautiful. I love her personality, and I just love the way that she presents herself as an artist so much. The short film especially really shows a lot of that blooming, a lot of that transitioning into this new period of her life. She talked a lot about how her mother had passed as she was coming out to her. Her and her girlfriend essentially had, you know, been planning on coming out to Angel's mom, and how, you know, those conversations would have went. But unfortunately, she passed around the time when that was going on. So her having to deal with, you know, essentially coming out and having a girlfriend, balancing the relationship, as well as her mother passing away. As she said in the Q&A, this album is really dedicated in a way to her mother, as well as to her girlfriend, because, you know, this is essentially her album, essentially like a coping mechanism for her, and all of the songs are really written about her and for her, essentially explaining her struggle, her emotional vulnerability, and just her relationship with her mother, with past lovers, as well as her present relationship. Just the amount of vulnerability on this album, and the way that she's able to present her emotions so fluidly, and so in such a way that, you know, hadn't really been expressed this deeply on her past project, was really something that was very eye-opening and really interesting to hear, especially directly from her, seeing her live and hearing her talk about it in a sort of like more of like an interview setting. Our first taste of this album obviously was, you know, All the Good Times and Big Time, which were some two breakout singles that she released before this. That was really the first indication of the new sound choice that she was going to be going with for this new album, which obviously has this indie country-esque twang to it. I think on her promo poster it was like out with the bangs, in with the twang, something like that, which I thought was really hilarious. Although I do miss her bangs. I think she looks good with the bangs, so, you know, maybe she'll bring them back at some point. But I do remember there was this one moment, especially at the beginning of the short film that she did, where she is essentially wearing the silver wig from a lot of the My Woman era music videos. The scene was essentially about taking off the wig and her putting on, like, you know, a flannel and some jeans, essentially showing the cocooning that she would be going through for this new project, both literally and also in a meta commentary kind of sense, where, you know, her old persona from her previous albums was being shed into this new persona of her true self, I guess you could say. In terms of production, Production is just absolutely very, very clean, very cut and dry on this project. But in a way, I kind of almost see it as melding My Woman and All Mirrors, and I guess also some of her very early work as well, especially from her Strange Cacti EP. I almost see this album as sort of like melding the two and then presenting it in sort of like a country-esque kind of style. Especially towards the back half when we get a lot of these beautiful string arrangements that come into the mix. That seems very All Mirrors, coming definitely pulling from that aesthetic into this one. A lot of the twangs and a lot of like her style of singing and, you know, a lot of the upbeat motions in the first half sort of feel a little bit similar to Halfway Home. So, and also I guess a little bit of My Woman as well. I don't know, that's just the way that I have interpreted it. I'm sure she was probably going for a little bit more of like a genuine presentation, but that's just how I digested it. Obviously hearing it from her in person was definitely a little bit more clear and understanding. But yeah, production is just super cut and dry, very twangy, very country style, but not presented in a way that feels like it's going full country. There's definitely that indie rock style that is still melded into her music still, so it's easily digestible still, not going full country, you know, with all of the twangs, all of the stadium rock and presentation and whatnot. It's still very cut and dry, still very acoustic, which I definitely prefer as well. And then also lyrically, this album is just full of heartbreak, full of, you know, essentially her trying to process her emotions and her trying to process the grief. This album is really grief-stricken, and this album is really about her trying to figure out her old self and her trying to progress and her trying to cope with a lot of the emotional distress that she's been through within the past year or two. Obviously, All the Good Times is definitely, as the starter for this project, is a good indication of that, shitting off her previous emotions and her previous troubles and shitting off like an old relationship and moving on into this new phase of her life and this new phase of the album, I guess, in another sense as well. Big Time, which is probably like the ultimate country song on this project, it definitely has a lot of the twangs and her essentially talking about falling in love with someone but being possibly unsure about the relationship, being unsure about her emotions and just the uncertainty of it all, but her still falling in love for that person. We sort of venture on, you know, we've got, it's almost like a surrealist sense going on throughout the album, especially with Dream On, All of the Flowers, Right Now. These tracks definitely give off more of like a dreamy, almost, you know, metaphorical sense to a lot of her writing on these songs. Also, looking at the short film when we saw it, there's a lot of surreal elements in the short film that definitely parallel what's going on in the album musically and also what she's been writing about. She mentioned in the live Q&A that she had been writing a lot about her dreams and how that parallels what she had been going through emotionally in real life. So there's definitely some of that sense bleeding into her songwriting and into this album. Where this album kind of, I guess, falters a little bit for me is just how cut and dry it is. I don't think there's a whole lot of variation throughout this project, not like there was on All Mirrors. There's just not a whole lot of musical variation or a whole lot of, I guess, where this album kind of falters for me a little bit is just how cut and dry and just how like similar in tone a lot of the tracks are. Angel's performance here is very, I guess, somber and very, very soft for a lot of these tracks, especially during the middle portion of the album. But a lot of these tracks as well also have these very long, these very extended crescendos, a lot of these really long builds that feel a little bit more like her old style. The pacing of the album just sort of is an issue because there's not a whole lot of diversity, at least in my opinion, but there's still enough there to really grab you with a lot of these really elegant and beautiful builds like All the Flowers and, you know, Through the Fires and Chasing the Sun. A lot of these really nice strings that start to come in towards the last half of the project. I guess I just wish Angel had sort of you know, evoked a little bit more for me, but her singing style and her songwriting are just so beautiful that it really holds you throughout this whole project, really putting the emphasis on her and her voice throughout this whole album, and that's definitely shown in the mix as well. But yeah, so overall, I would say while this isn't necessarily my favorite Angel Olsen album, I would definitely say that it still evokes a certain emotion, and it still presents itself as a really good listen and a really interesting deep dive into her emotional vulnerability and what she has been going through throughout the past couple of years and whatnot. If you're into this sort of sound, this sort of like country-esque style, I think you would really enjoy it. But even for her previous fans, for her longtime fans, there's still that indie rock and, you know, acoustic folk flair that she brings to a lot of her previous tracks, and as well as that grandiose production that comes in towards the last half of the album. So there's still a lot here for everybody, even if it's presenting itself as sort of more of like a country album. But yeah, I would say overall, Big Time by Angel Olsen, I would probably give this album a 7 out of 10. And in comparison, I guess, with her other projects, if you guys are curious, I think I have My Woman at like a 9, and then I would give like All Mirrors like an 8, something like that. So this is definitely still up there for me. I definitely still enjoy the project. It's just not one of my favorites. The sound isn't all really for me. I'm not super into some of the more country aesthetics that she's presenting. However, I still think it works for the story that she's trying to tell and with the subject matter as well. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the new Angel Olsen album, Big Time. If you guys haven't heard it yet, or if you guys haven't finished it yet, go ahead and listen to it for yourselves for sure. It's been out for about like a week now, so, you know, people have definitely heard of it, and people have definitely heard some of the songs she just performed on Jimmy Kimmel, so that's pretty cool. Very big for her as well. Be sure to comment down below if you guys have any thoughts or opinions yourselves, if you guys disagreed or have any more information on, you know, some of the production choices, some of the storytelling that she's bringing up, or just some more insights in general about her. Go ahead and drop it down in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe as always. Obviously today is also Thursday, so New Music Friday coming up tomorrow. Gonna be reviewing and reacting to possibly a couple things that might come out tomorrow. I know that SZA Deluxe album came out like earlier today, so I may or may not be doing a review or possibly a reaction to that, but we'll go ahead and see. Possibly it might be coming out this weekend. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next video.